In this lesson, we're going to talk about chapters 9 and 10 of the International Mechanical Code. 9 talks about appliances such as fireplaces, solid burning fuel equipment, and 10 talks about boilers. It's a good combination because they sort of build upon each other. We start off with section 901. It's general scope. It tells you what equipment and specifically what activity with the equipment, like repair, alteration, installation, construction. Okay, it tells you what the hazardous locations are and gives some basic definitions that were not given in chapter 2. 902 talks about masonry fire codes, refers you back to International Building Code. It's not covered under the International Mechanical Code. However, if you service this equipment, you have to go back to International Building Code. Section 903 talks about factory-built fireplaces and very specifically says has to be UL listed. Talks about hearth extensions and unvented log heaters, again, must be UL listed. Section 904 talks about wood-burning fuel appliances like pellet stoves. 905 talks about fireplace stoves and room heaters. Again, you'll notice UL listed. You'll notice that the connections to the fireplaces must be in accordance with the venting in 8017 and 8010. 906 talks about factory-built barbecue appliances, and 907 talks about incinerators and crematories. They must be UL listed 791. Section 908 talks about cooling towers, evaporative condensers, and fluid coolers. Talks about how they have to be vented, their access to it, and the locations thereof. They have to talk about the support, the anchoring, the water supplies. Section 909 talks about vented wall appliances. Okay, this is any appliance you mount on the wall, like little gas heaters. 910 talks about floor furnaces, how they're installed, the placement of them, and where they're at. 911 talks about duct furnaces. Again, UL listed. These are furnaces that are inside ductwork. Very specific because of fire issues. Have to have airflow. 912 talks about infrared space heaters and basically says installing with in accordance with manufacturer directions. 913 talks about clothes dryers. They have to be UL listed. 914 talks about sauna heaters, the guards, what type of warning notices are required for people using a sauna. Section 915 talks about engine and gas turbine powered appliances and equipment, such as gasoline powered air conditioners. 916 talks about pool and spa heaters. 917 talks about cooking appliances, domestic appliances. 918 talks about forced warm air furnaces. What's the sizes? What's the minimum duct sizes? Where they're installed. 918 talks about heat pumps, dampers, circulating air. Okay, this is all covered in this section. Now, it is also covered in the ductwork section. It is covered in the gas code or oil code. So you have a variety of different areas you're going to have to go through. Conversion burners refers back to ANSI, American National Standards Institute. So you might have to reference both this code book and a variety of other codes. 920 talks about unit heaters. 921 talks about vented room heaters. 922 talks about kerosene and oil-fired stove. 923 talks about ceramic kilns. 924 talks about fuel cell power systems. So as we go through here, you'll find out that every one of these is referencing another code book. You have to look at those other code books in order to install within International Mechanical Code. Then we move on to chapter 10. Very specifically talks about boilers, water heaters, and anything that's under pressure. You must take a look at the general scope of this. It's very important. It gives the specific requirements. Water heaters, again, we're talking about safety. Water heaters can explode. Pressure vessels, we want to be very careful about welding and the piping. Boilers refers you to a whole bunch of other standards. NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Agency, okay, or association. Installation, working clearances, top clearances. Talks about the mounting, the floors, Boiler connections talks about shutoff valve required, and it will refer you back to International Plumbing Code for anything that has to do with domestic water. It's called potable water. Section 10006 talks about pressure relief valves for steam boilers, hot water boilers, pressure vessels. Be very aware here where it says you may not install any other valve after a pressure relief valve or a safety relief valve. You may not install these valves in series. If one has gone bad, pull it out, replace it, put in a new one. Power supply for electrical controls must be done within National Electrical Code, but you'll notice it says very specifically control voltage cannot exceed 150 volts. So 120 volts is basically what you're going to use for control voltage. You'll see it in section 10007, boiler low water cutoffs. We don't want boilers to run dry. We have steam blow-off valves for steam equipment. The minimum size of the valve should be specified by the boiler manufacturer. Make sure you look. Hot water boiler expansion tanks are required because hot water expands. You'll see that all there. You'll see in 1010, all boilers must have some gauges. They have to have boiler pressure gauge and steam pressure gauge. Steam boilers must have a water gauge glass. In other words, you have to be able to visibly see the level of the water in the boiler. You'll notice that 1011 talks about the test requirements of boilers. How high do they have to be tested prior to being put into service? Your building official is going to refer you to this in inspection time. So, chapters 9 and 10 are extremely important, but more important is to realize what other code books they refer you to. International Mechanical Code doesn't always have the answer. You might have to go a step further. So go ahead now, do your homework assignments, do your reading, reread both these chapters. They're relatively short. Maybe try to find some of the stuff in the other code books. And then do the discussion questions and do the worksheets. When you're all done with that and you're sure to move on, do the end of unit quiz and move on to the next chapter.